think we should try to move ahead a little bit in our chapters. We've done a lot on 5.
On page 155, it says, "A wise man once said to be careful of what you wish for, because you may get it. I wanted to be a hero," and that's like the start of the chapter. And I think that people want to be a hero, but some of these men, they still wanted to be a hero, but they just got pushed into this war, and it's like they're not even ready for it, and they weren't even prepared, but they got what they wished for, but it's not necessarily good. So I feel like that's what he's like trying to say in here.
Yeah, maybe sometimes you don't realize all the extra baggage that comes with whatever it is you want to be, or all the extra responsibility, or what you have to go through to get there. And that's something like I think we all need to consider too, you know.
Yeah, and people like use a kind of propaganda in a type of way to
They do.
make it kind of look perfect almost, and it's actually not.
And he talks about that in here too.
On page 157, like paragraph 3, it's talking about like how they always have to be like open for a surprise. Like there's like booby traps and everything everywhere. I just can't like imagine what it'd be like to like know at any second you could just be gone. 157. That's why I could never be in it, ever. Just like, even with gunshots, it's like
The
an instant you
surprise.
could be gone or injured. It's insane to think about.
Yeah, I think when you were talking about that, like on 157 down at the bottom, he starts a paragraph, the second one from the bottom. In war, you need to be lucky. You know, it's not all about, some of it just is luck. Be at war long enough and you'll have some bad days. Just before dawn, about 500 meters from the NVA position, we started running into booby traps, tripwires leading to mines lashed in trees at chest level. Our point men were terrified. You know, somebody has to go first. Somebody has to be the point. And what a frightening position to be in. We rotated them every 5 minutes, pushed ahead, then we stumbled into a listening post, and a brief firefight erupted. So much for surprise. That whole idea of, you know, someone has to go first and that they would rotate, it's not going to help you if you just stay put. Somebody has to be first. You know, I think that's something too we might learn from. It's a very frightening thing to be first.
Well, and I think that kind of ties in on page 134. He talks about like when he was joining the Marines, and he talks about like how he swore an oath to like follow the orders of the commander and defend the Constitution. So I think 134. So I think that kind of ties in with like someone has to like, they need to like work together, but they can't always like put one person ahead, because at some point that person will die. You have to like keep working as a team and like defending together.
Yeah. I was just gonna point out, on page 142, he talks about like the dark side to the surrender, which is kind of tying into what Tasia said about how they're warriors, they don't want to surrender, they want to fight all on their own. And then he says like, later on he says that he's responsible for all the atrocities in Vietnam that he like committed with his own hands. And then that also was something that I was really surprised about, because really I always figured in my head like, well, they come home and people treat them really badly, but everyone knows it's really not their fault because they were drafted, they were forced to go, and like, not all of them, but you know,
Yeah.
I figured in their head they would think, this isn't my fault, this is just, I was doing my job. But that's not how he's thinking at all. He's thinking, I'm taking responsibility for these, this is like, I'm accountable, and that's gotta be really, really like, tough. And I just don't know if I would be able to hold myself accountable after all of that. I feel like I would just find someone else to blame. So I just wanted to point that out. Which one, Carter? That was on 142 and 143. Should write that down too.
I think one of the more interesting chapters I thought was chapter 6. He talks about how talks about the decision of lying or not, like to people on the battlefield, and it's interesting because it's a moral struggle. Like, you choose to lie or not, and the reason you'd be choosing in the first place is because in some cases it can hurt others. So he talks about on the top of page 132, the deliberate lie is an intentionally launched piece of misinformation, which, like any other missile, can be launched for good or for evil. Its morality is dependent upon the intent of the launcher. Its effectiveness, as with all missiles, depends upon the launcher's skill and judgment. So it's just real interesting to think like how, he gave an example I think earlier on in this chapter about death counts, I think. Where it's like, okay, you can lie about the death count and say no one died, and make the person you're giving the information to feel like they didn't really do much, I guess. Trying to find an example.
With the bombing.
Yes. I was not sure. I took a note on a particular example, but
You did. You're in the right chapter. Yep. I think it's maybe 127. And maybe 126 too, and he asks, is this, at the bottom he says 2 minutes later, there's a third voice, Winchester, this is round robin, actual, 6 actual. This damage assessment is totally unacceptable. And then he talks about the stats looking bad, and then he lies. He says on 127, I lied for the same reason Smithers did, the request was stupid. It risked 2 lives, so he lies so they don't have to risk more lives. And an airplane for an unworthy objective. You know, the people that weren't on the ground didn't know how dangerous it was. They just wanted their stats. And then at the bottom of 127, he said, everyone involved had to know it was a total fabrication, but I was the only official liar. The captain got what he wanted. So did the statistician in Washington. In fact, Washington got double pleasure because, of course, it got added to the Air Force's report of the actual destruction, which occurred later that morning. 2 road intersections. Call the Washington Post. So that's a newspaper. If the public had only known the irony in these kinds of statistics. So basically, he's making the connection for us that the kill statistics were used as propaganda, what you talked about before, for the public. You know, if we thought the war was going well, more people would support it. But there were so many lies going on, you know, that the kill numbers weren't correct. And I like on 129 what he says, too, at the end of that last paragraph. He says, I, like most people, could always use some more self-esteem. The more you have, the less you lie.
I like on page 141, paragraph 2, it's talking about how his loyalty is based on the people and the ideas behind him. He says somewhere in here that there have been like thousands of people who have taken the same orders and they still got through it, and that's kind of his like standpoint. It's just a really interesting paragraph.
I feel like loyalty to like their like the numbers on their side. It's probably hard sometimes because on like page 162 and 163, he says he said they wanted to get him before he bled to death because like someone got shot, and then another part of him was screaming to listen to Bell and stay safe. So I kind of feel like it was hard if he was trying to decide to like protect himself or go try to save one of his men.
Yep, that's with Utter, right?
Yeah.
And then he works right into the idea of medals. There was a third part. I wanted a medal.
Going back to the lying and being like good or bad, page 100 he talks about like just being a good or a bad person in general. It's the third paragraph on the page. And he talks about like the badder that you were as an individual, the more esteem you had in that community, as long as the badness didn't spill over to those on your own side. And then he talks about like what their jackets had written on the back of them. So like I think that that also kind of ties in with like him talking about the difference between good and bad lies. He's just talking more like good and bad people and how you can kind of mix that up. But you can also kind of mix up the good and bad lying.
Is that where he works in the biblical illusion? Either I walk through the valley of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. I shall fear no evil. I'm the meanest.
And this is kind of tying into what I don't remember who said about loyalty and like how he's starting to, or he was starting to distrust, you know, the people in charge of him, and he's trying to stay loyal. And it says, it's on page 149, we tried for a long time to soon, it starts up here actually, because then it says the radio is burned with questions about our progress. And that's again talking about the body count, so right away he's like wondering in his head, okay, why do they care so much, you know, obviously we're all okay, and then he starts to talk about they were certainly not worth it in that environment where no hill was important and no battle critical other than for a body count. And then it mentions it in a couple other places where like they want to know how many people they've killed. And I know that like when we did our research and stuff, there was a lot of lies about the body count because they were losing the war and like they knew it, and so they would just want to make Americans feel better because there was so many like anti-war protests, and so they were lying all the time, not just the people who were fighting, but the people in charge would even lie to, I don't know, like make it sound like we killed more people, so we were winning when everyone knew we were losing. And so, just wanted to.
Yeah, I like where you were on like in 149 though, the end of that one paragraph says careers get hurt over things like this, and he goes on to talk about the importance, you know, it's not just for those that are out of it, you know, there's careers at stake here too. If this is your, you know,
And
what
there
you're
was,
doing for a living.
In the other book, there was a quote from a man, and he, like his, I don't know, his like officer, whoever was in charge of him, asked him over the radio like how many people they killed because they were defending the Marine base, and he said like 300, and then they showed up and there was like 30 bodies, and he asked him why he, you know, got that number, and he was like, well, there's a lot more out there. You should go live again. And then he told him, like, I have a wife and daughter at home that I have to support, and then they just let it go, and they reported the 320 or whatever the number was.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, there was also the careers, and I guess we don't think about that. It's more like just the lives at stake, but then also there's the livelihood where they have to make money for their families and stuff.
Seems like so many different things interweaving,
Yeah.
you know, to...
And I like that on that same page he says like loyalty started to wobble, so like you didn't always know like who would like just like let that go for you, and like who would just like take into consideration what you're going through.
This is kind of unrelated, but when you talk about like loyalty starting to wobble, there's a lot of people who like didn't trust their, I guess, commanding officers. I don't know how you would say it.
Yeah.
And so there was actually a lot of cases called like fragging, where they would kill their like people in charge of them because they felt they were like lazy, or like towards the end of the war when they were starting to pull people out, they would send them out on really dangerous missions, and they didn't want to go because they're about to go home, so they would just like shoot the person in charge
Yeah,
of them.
I'm not going.
And that's pretty crazy how like quickly that can switch from
Yeah, oh,
doing
yeah.
everything they say to like killing them. I don't know.
Yeah.
On page 149, how it says like loyalty is important and stuff, I kind of feel like, it doesn't really say it in the text, but I kind of feel like it'd be really important like when you're talking about the body count and stuff, because like there's already people against the war, so if they like found out that they were lying about the body count, it would just make it worse for them, so
Yeah.
I think it would be better Just tough.
Yeah, because people lose support. If you're not winning, who wants to be in the backing a losing team?
And it almost like inflated both sides of like the protests, because these people like, we're losing the war, we should pull out, and then they're telling them, well, we're killing all these people, so to make them feel better. Then there's also the anti-war protests. They're like, we shouldn't be killing all these innocent
Yep.
civilians, and now
Why
those
are we
numbers
there?
are going up. So both sides are going to be angry no matter what.
Yeah,
So like they kind of just hurt themselves. with
just
that.
an inferno.
On page 149, it says, the radios burned with questions about our progress. Like that little like sentence there, I think that it was kind of probably weird for the soldiers to hear, like, because I know they have radios down there and they could listen. So I bet it was like kind of weird hearing what like America had to say, like, how the war was going, like, what was going on. What people were doing could end the war and stuff. Because I bet there was definitely some over-exaggeration in the radio, definitely. It was bad, I'm not saying that the war wasn't bad, but, there's definitely some
If someone
lies.
was listening in and you could tell that they were lying, I'm sure that didn't make you feel very good.
On page 166, paragraph 6, I like this quote because I feel like this is something they have to think about a lot to get through what they have to do. It says, that was all the hero needed. You see, heroes don't die, they're immortal. They return from the land of the dead and bring back the boon. And I like that a lot because as this is like
166. It's at the bottom, like the
okay.
third
It's like
paragraph
a
up.
recurring theme, how like they feel like they need to be personally their own heroes so they can get back home and they can get through it without having too much damage, like all these soldiers that have like gone home and committed suicide and like couldn't handle it. I feel like being a hero would help them get through all that.
I think it kind of lets us into his head too when he's doing some of these feats. The backstory here is that they have a guy that's dying who's got a couple of kids at home, who's 27, and they need someone to go get him. And Merlantes says, well, I'll go get him if I can get a medal, And the whole idea that, yeah, I get a medal, I'm a hero, heroes never die, so it's almost this invincibility, this taking of risks, And then he talks about why some people get medals and other people don't. I mean, you have to have somebody write you up for one, suggest you for one, that sort of thing. I mean, you don't just automatically, oh, you just got done running this hill, you get a medal. So personality and how well you are liked also plays into this. So there's so many sides.
Okay. It's not actually like a text connection I have in mind, it's connecting to what you said about how they can hear the radio and like they can listen to what people are saying back home. And a lot of when I was reading about like the war draft and stuff for my assignment was that the media is what made us lose the war. I didn't really understand that, but like looking at this, like a personal connection I can make is like when I'm doing my chores and Jonah's sitting on the couch, I get really mad. I just like stop. I'm like, okay, I'm done. You're not working, I'm not working. So that's what I imagine they would feel.
Yeah.
Because they're hearing that this doesn't even matter and they're all, working.
Risking
their
everything to, yep. All right.